Welcome to the Venture Playbook Podcast. I'm your host today, Ambre Julia, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ciara Close.
Hi, I'm Ciara.
Our guest today is Anne Ravanona. Anne is a recognized global advocate and keynote speaker on access to funding for women entrepreneurs and women's economic empowerment. She is an entrepreneur, a podcast host, the founder of the InvestHer Summits, and the founder of Global InvestHer. Anne brings together corporates, investors, governments, international organizations, and women entrepreneurs to address the funding gap. Since 2013, Global InvestHer has been on a mission to get women entrepreneurs funded. Today, its mission is to reach 1 million women entrepreneurs funded by 2030 to help close the funding gap. Welcome to the podcast, Anne.
Thank you, Ambre. I'm delighted to be with you and Ciara today, and it's a great honor. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So first off, I'd want to ask a question about your background so we get to know you a little bit better. Can you share a little bit about your professional journey and how this has all led to you doing the advocacy work you're currently doing?
Sure. So it's going to be a lightning speed. I have a degree in international marketing and languages from a university in Ireland, Dublin City University. And basically, as soon as I graduated, I was headhunted by an Irish company to set up their sales office in France. So I was flying the Irish flag globally from age 21. And so over about 25 years, over about 20 years, I was working for different companies selling products and services into big corporates. So big corporates were my ultimate clients. But throughout that process, I was learning and doing a lot of pitching. So I was pitching for big RFPs, big tenders, and winning multi-million-dollar deals. So I learned all the pitching stuff. And throughout my professional career, I hit so many of those glass ceilings that were gendered. I was illegally dismissed after I had a baby. I had discrimination, being paid less than the person I was training in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A long list of things. And I realized they were all due to my gender over the time. But where it came to the crunch for me was in 2012, I was at an event in London at the Cherie Blair Foundation. And Cherie Blair, she has a global nonprofit helping women entrepreneurs in developing countries. And I was a person in the audience and I put my hand up. There was a successful woman entrepreneur who was speaking. And I asked her what her greatest challenge was. And she said access to funding. And a light bulb went off in my head. It's exactly like in the cartoons. I kid you not. I kind of said, is it harder for women to get funding because they're women? And I had never, ever thought about that. And I said, really? Is it harder just because you're a woman? So I started to get curious. So becoming curious was, I started to find research. The question wouldn't go. It literally would not leave my head. Is it harder to get funding if you're a woman? So I found research of the time in 2013 by the IFC World Bank, and they estimated that the global credit gap between male and female entrepreneurs at the time was $300 billion. And that stopped me in my tracks. I said, oh my God, this is a huge problem. And you're telling me that the difference in what male and female entrepreneurs are raising and getting access to for their capital, for their business is $300 billion just based on gender. I said, now I've found. Because over this 25 years that I had behind me, I wasn't too sure. Like I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know in what. So the what found me and it has never left me. So that was 11 years ago. And it was really, I said, what is this problem? How big is this problem? Why is it there? And how can I solve it? Because I said to myself, I always wanted to work in something that was global, business, women, leadership, and solving an important problem. So that's how it came, and how I came to the 1 million women funded by 2030 SDGs behind me. If you're listening, I have a poster of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals behind me that are all, of course, helping us, giving us the targets to reach by 2030. But the reason I came up with that target, which is a very ambitious goal, is because I was invited to a lunch to prepare a big forum, a gender equality forum in Paris that was happening in 2020. I was invited to this lunch with President Macron. We were 10 people. I was really, really lucky. And I was invited to that. And they told me, his team told me the night before, they said, are you going for lunch tomorrow, Brad and Rack? I'm like, oh, let me check my diary. Yes, I think I can make it. So anyway, when I was thinking overnight, they said, look, we'd like you to talk about access to capital for women entrepreneurs and give him recommendations for France, what he should do. No problem. I can do that. So anyway, I was thinking overnight and I said, I've got to go in with a big, hairy, audacious goal. And that's where the 1 million investors came to life. And I went in with recommendations for France. And I said to him, Mr. President, you're sitting at the G7 and the G20. So this is what you can do. And I had a written document. I was the only one who left a written document. I went all in. So that's where the goal came from. And, we're still working. We're only at the very beginning of working on it. To be frank, there's a big goal, but it's a collective goal. And Ciara, it's not global investor only. It's how can we rally everybody to help close the funding gap?
Yeah, amazing. So the questions I wanted to ask you next are about starting Global Investor. And there's a quote which probably links to what you were saying, your experience in your professional life. There's a quote on the website that says, "We don't need more mentoring. We need funding and access to markets and to networks." So can you tell us a bit more about this quote? What do you mean? And what the mission is of Global Investor, which I suppose you've kind of touched on already.
Yeah, I mean, the mission is to help close the funding gap. Today, and Ciara, that funding gap is estimated, I told you 300 billion, that was in 2013. Today, 2019 was the latest statistics that the World Bank did. It was now estimated to be $1.7 trillion. From 300 billion to 1.7 trillion. Women consistently have been accessing anything from 1.8% to 2.3% total venture capital worldwide. And if you're a woman of color, it's less than 1%. If you happen to be a Black woman, it's like less than 0.2%. If you are a Latina, it's even worse. If you have an intersectional diversity, such as being from the LGBTQI plus community, or you're living with a disability, it's all compounded. So in either way, those statistics to me are unbearable, unacceptable. And that's what drives me. So coming back to your question about what is this about access to capital and markets? When I say the best form of funding is a paying customer, that's where the access to markets comes in. If we were more conscious as consumers, as corporates, as governments, and we bought from women entrepreneurs, we could have an incredible effect on the global economy. Because I told you that 1.7 trillion, the kind of 1.8% of VC going to women founders across the world. Guess what percentage of purchasing globally, whether it's from a corporate or a government, what percentage goes to women owners? Guess.
Not much.
Not much, says Ambre. Ciara, what do you think?
Gosh, would I be optimistic and say 5%?
You'd be super optimistic because unfortunately it's 1%. So 1% of government spending worldwide goes to women-owned businesses, and 1% of corporates buying from women goes to women-owned businesses. And the 5%, I'm glad you mentioned 5, because actually that was a target that the US government has had over the past 20, 30 years. They have reached that target. It's written into law that 5% of government purchasing should go to minority founders. And guess what? Women are considered minority founders by all the governments up until now. I won't talk about the current government at the moment, leaders. But basically, they only hit that 5% target twice in the past 20 years. So we're way off. So that's why access to markets is customers or users buying from women-owned businesses could have a huge ripple effect, because we could, basically get more capital. The best form of funding is a paying customer. So that's what access to market is. Let's buy from her. And then when it comes to the funding piece, access to capital, it's simply down to we don't need more mentoring. Women are not broken. The system is broken. There's nothing wrong with us. And if you start me on women are more risk averse, I will come back to you on that point, because I do not agree with it for 1 second. But, and I will let you kind of come back on those points. But really, it's like all I am asking for and working for and fighting for and advocating for is equal access to opportunity. It's not about buy from women because they're women or they're better than men, or invest in women because they're women and they're better than men. There's enough pie in the pie is big enough for all of us. We can make it bigger, but we're missing out. The world is missing out on innovation and on value creation because we're not offering the same access to opportunity, whether it is capital or consumers or just attention. There's so many things wrong in the system that are contributing to those horrific statistics that I quoted earlier.
And so you're helping women get this visibility and get these clients. Can you tell us a bit more about the free platforms that you created? So the See Her, the Fund Her, and the Buy From Her.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for mentioning them, Ambre. So if you go on to globalinvestor.com, you will see those are our 3 calls to action. See Her, Fund Her, and Buy From Her. See Her is number 1. See her, see that she exists, see that there's a woman behind that business. And so when you go on to See Her, you will see our global database of over 1,600 women entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses that came out of COVID, actually, Ambre and Ciara, because during COVID, I said, how can I help those women? We're all stuck at home. How can I help women? And so I built the first global database of women-owned businesses because it didn't exist. There were regional ones, city ones, maybe sometimes a country one of some women-owned businesses, but I wanted to create one that is global, that also is all sectors and products and services. So that is very curated. So that's why there's only 1,600, because obviously there are millions of women-owned businesses worldwide, but they have to be in the formal economy and they all have, viable businesses. So those are the ones that we've chosen. So if you go to See Her, you will see and search, hey, I can find great businesses. And the profiles is really there. We showcase the woman entrepreneur. Who is it, Ciara? Who is it, Ambre? Who is Ciara? Who is Ambre? And what has motivated her to build her business? So that's what See Her. Fund Her is a section that is, of course, it's the call to action. Let's fund her. Let's invest in women entrepreneurs. And so we are pivoting our membership to make it even easier to kind of fund her and buy from her, which I'll come to in a second. So, very shortly, you will have a membership where women entrepreneurs who are actively looking for funding can become members and put their profiles on a global deal directory. So I want to create the best sort deal directory of deals of women-owned businesses who are actively searching for funding to make it easier for those investors around the world to find great deals by women, diverse women. So that is in Fund Her. So you will be able to find fantastic women-owned businesses actively fundraising or about to, because even if they're not actively fundraising now, I want them to be visible because they're just not on the radar. Okay. So that way, investors, so many times I've said in meetings or I've spoken and speeches and all that stuff. And I get so annoyed when I ask investors, so what percentage of your deal flow is women-owned businesses, women entrepreneurs? They cannot answer the question. Very few of them know what percentage of their investment is in women-owned businesses. Some are starting to count. So if you can't see her, we don't count. But actually, we, women entrepreneurs, we count. And we hold up the sky. We hold up the global economy. Because guess what? We are responsible for over 80% of purchasing decisions worldwide, apart from anything else. So Fund Her is all about giving the resources to the woman founder who's actively fundraising through the community, through different resources, and putting her deal on this deal flow directory to be found more easily by investors. And I want those investors to come to us and say, hey, I know that the deals I'm seeing on Global Investor, they are quality curated. So that's Fund Her. And Buy From Her is the call to action that I kind of said earlier on, and Ciara, which is the best form of funding is a paying customer. We could change global GDP. We could change our local communities, our national communities, our regional communities, and the global GDP if we started to invest more in women. Meaning, let's be more conscious when we're buying product or service. Let's see who's behind that. And can we consciously choose a woman-owned business rather than the dudes. Because today, as I said, less than 2% of venture capital goes to women-only teams. About 18% goes to mixed gender teams. We're still at basically 80% of all funding all around the world goes to teams by men only. And we're missing out. Sorry, I could go on forever because you could tell the passion. So that's what it's like. How can we see her? How can we fund her? How can we buy from her? I want us, Global Invest Her, to be the catalysts for change, but the connectors. We're catalysts and connectors. So how can we more easily connect you to great women to buy from and invest in?
Great, amazing. So now I want to ask a little bit about how you developed all of this, from having the idea, like you explained where that comes from, and then now having these free platforms, the 1,600 women signed up there. How did you develop this? How did you manage the growth of it?
So it's an ongoing process, It's a good question. And it's been pivoting over a couple of years. I think in the very beginning, I started out by interviewing hundreds of women entrepreneurs about their funding journeys because I wanted to understand the true pain point. That yes, there is a statistics, but what's behind that? Like, what are the barriers they're facing, and how could we help make that better? So in the beginning, it was about offering educational resources to help them to demystify the funding journey, to show, hey, this is how you do it from A to Z. And by the way, let me bring in the experts who know what this is about, meaning the investors. Let's show you and get you to meet and hear from investors, different type of investors, so that you see they're not the big bad wolves. We have Shark's Tank and we have, Dragon's Den. They're not sharks, they're not dragons. They're actually people with money that is either their own or someone else's that they need to invest wisely for a good return. And so if you understand better as a founder what they're looking for, what their needs are, and how you need to interact with them, that can make it better. That was my premise. So beginning, it was really around how can we educate the women founders to make it easier for them. Then that morphed. We started to have partnerships with some corporates. So in 2017 we did a global mentoring competition with AXA. So AXA said, okay, AXA, which is the number one insurance company in the world, they wanted to support femtech, so women in the femtech industry. And so they had a global mentoring competition. With the mentoring was from 5 leaders from AXA. We had like over 250 applicants from 50 countries for 5 spots of being mentored, like guided through by senior leaders at AXA to help them break into the supply chain. Because again, this is the whole point. Like, they want to choose the companies that are really going well, that could potentially become, clients of AXA or get into the client pool, through the AXA introduction. So that was a successful partnership with AXA. Then since about 2019, we've been partnering with Dell for Dell Technologies, for the Dell Women Entrepreneur Network. So it's morphed, it went from kind of purely education for the founder to how can we support the corporates who are supporting women entrepreneurs. So we worked with Dell. We have been successful for several years. So Dell had a global network called DWEN, which is the Dell Women Entrepreneur Network, with over 100,000 women entrepreneurs. And so Global Invest Her, we provided the funding content. We created a funding hub on that directory, on dwen.com, to help women entrepreneurs navigate that. So we would create podcast videos with investors, and I would break down, this is what investor looks for, etc., just demystifying it for women founders. And then more recently, other projects around funding blueprints that I'm sure we can touch on as well. I don't know if you want us to touch on it now, or a bit later.
Yeah, we can. I think Ciara had a few questions around the Dell partnership. We can talk about it now. Yeah.
Yeah, Ciara. So tell me, what would you like to know?
I suppose one of the things I've been listening to kind of talk through all of this. I tried to start a business before when I was a few years younger, and kind of gone through a lot of the things. So when I'm hearing you kind of talking through, the motivation and the inspiration and all the different needs and requirements, even the comment that you made about, like, if one more person says women are risk averse, and that's really laugh, because I do think, like, we're definitely not risk averse, but we are different. And so the needs and what we would benefit from, or how how we will access things or the extra supports we need is necessarily going to be different. Because no point in saying we aren't, we are. And then the other thing I'd pick up on was your point about like the GDP and expanding GDP. We use different how we use services or what services we want. Or again, it's just a male female difference. Like we want different things, and therefore there's a huge opportunity for male founders as well to take advantage of what women want. So just wanted to catch a couple of those as I was listening to you. They were kind of popping into my head. But yeah, on the blueprint. So when I was looking up about the blueprint, again, because I'd kind of gone through this myself, I just found it like it was so cool to see like, okay, let's start to sort of map out what are the resources, what are the resources and what are investors looking for in different markets and so forth. Because it's different whether we're in Dublin or we're in London or we're in Paris or wherever we happen to be, it's different. So I'd love you to kind of just talk through the blueprint. What is the blueprint? Who it's for? And kind of where you see that progressing.
Yeah, thank you, Ciara. So, and thanks for picking up on those other points that you picked up. And just I want to circle back on one point on that before I go into the funding blueprint. So, now we have more latest research. I think Boston Consulting Group at one point a few years ago, they came up with a statistic saying that if we invested in more women entrepreneurs, we could add 5 trillion to the global economy. Okay. And about 15% or something, I think it was at the time, to global GDP. Recently, so McKinsey Institute last year, they did research and they have said that if we invest in more women entrepreneurs, we can add 26 trillion to the global economy. It's a no-brainer. So I'm just kind of waiting for the world to wake up. I already 11 years ago have been talking about this. I could see the need that time ago. And I basically are dedicating the rest of my life to seeing what I can do to make that gap go down and contribute my small steps along the way. So part of that through the great partnership with Dell Technologies. So they have this women entrepreneur network called DWEN. It's now morphed. It's been brought into Dell for Startups. So now you'll find the following resources that I'm going to tell you about. All the funding content that was on DWEN, it's now on dellforstartups.com. So you can go and find it there. It's free for everybody. Just go in and sign up, join the community, and you can see it. So when I was partnering with Dell, Dell have been since 2015, or maybe 2015 or 2017, they had been doing a fantastic report called the We Cities Report, which is the Women Entrepreneur Cities Report with S&P Global as their research partners. And basically they have been mapping out 55 cities in the world and saying, and ranking them on how good supportive they are for women entrepreneurs on different pillars, on technology, on what you would expect from Dell. Of course, technology is an important pillar, but also on capital and on culture. And so when they launched the report in 2023, I was part of the webinar where they were launching this report, and I was commenting on that because I'm an expert on access to capital part. So I was talking to those pillars. Afterwards, I was speaking to Carolina, who is the Dell, the DWEN contact. And I said, Carolina, I think it would be amazing. I said, this report is fantastic for cities. They can see how they are benchmark against others, how they're doing and supporting women entrepreneurs. And once you know where you stand in the ranking, so what? Was my thing. It's like, how can that help the woman founder? The woman who's in there actually building a business, okay, if she knows that she's in London, which is the number 1 city in the ranking last year in the world for women entrepreneurs, brilliant. So what? So I said, I would really, really like you. Can Dell come up with a funding blueprint? So can we go one level deeper and say, what are the sources of funding available in that city? So what I convinced them to do, and I'm really proud of the work that I've done so far, is they said, okay, and we'd like you to do a deep dive on 9 cities in the world. They chose the cities that they wanted to do. And basically I do a roundup of what is the climate of funding in that city, first of all, in general. So what is it like to raise funding in that city? And what are the general sources of funding? So from dilutive and non-dilutive. So dilutive is when you have to give up equity for So you invite investors to invest money into the business, and non-dilutive are any of the non-equity based sources of funding. So loans, venture debt, crowdfunding, all of those other things, grants, that is all in the non-dilution. I said, that is useful to a founder, right? What exists generally in my city in dilutive, where I have to give up equity, and non-dilutive at a general level? And then what are the women-only sources of funding in the city? And then what are the other resources in the city, like chambers of commerce, like export bodies, like certification, women certification bodies that could be useful to you in your city? And then what are the women-only communities? So that's where we drill down. So these are the networking ones and the general communities. And then where relevant, I would do a deep dive, because in some cities there is a cultural aspect that it warrants that extra care and spotlight. So for example, in Sydney, I added a section on Indigenous First Nation founders, and also for Toronto, because that is specific to those cities. And Toronto is going to come out very soon. India, super, super interesting. So, each time I'm like, okay, here is the map of the city. Here are all the sources of funding, what you need to know, the communities. And at the end, I say, okay, what still needs to improve to make this even better? And it's really helpful then, I think, to the cities, but to the women entrepreneurs, to the policymakers, and to the investors, because they're too busy in working on in their silos to get this big picture view and then narrow it in. And that's what my wish is, to make it very practical and useful to the corporates, the policy shapers, the women entrepreneurs and the investors in that city to, okay. And of course, those who get featured are super happy to be featured, because I put the spotlight on the ones who are doing a good job. And even if they're the beginning of their journey and they have, partly invested in women, they get featured. And it's fantastic, because it's a way to rally people. So I'm very excited about it. You will find that on dellforstartups.com and on globalinvestor.com on our homepage. We're very proud that we link to it that goes to Dell, and you can download and read. But it's so cool. Like, for example, the London Blueprint, which is the number one city in the world, had like nearly 150 sources in there, like 150 resources in there. That's what makes it the best city for women entrepreneurs. I've done Paris with about 126. I've just finished Toronto, which is again 127. So these are countries and cities that are way ahead of the curve. We can learn from them. And it's not about copy pasting. It's about, okay, what can we learn and apply that is helpful for women entrepreneurs? So those are the funding blueprints. And if you're a corporate out there or an investment organization and you say, hey, this is cool stuff, I want to take it further, call me, because this was me proposing it to Dell, because they were already doing this amazing city research that hadn't been done before. And I said, we need to take this a little bit further. So I applaud Dell for that. And I also want to give a shout out to EY, because EY have a fantastic program called the Winning Women. So it's Entrepreneurial Winning Women program, and it's like in many cities in the world, and they're doing an incredible job. And EY have partnered with us as well on our Investor Summit, and they're partnering with us on Fund Her and on Buy From Her. So, it's amazing to see the corporates. And I'd say, last but certainly not least, a huge shout out to Cartier Women's Initiative. If you don't know, it's the non-profit arm of Cartier. And if you're a woman founder, check out their regional awards. They do awards every year. The top prize is $100,000. It's a grant. It's straight to you to help those impact entrepreneurs around the world to move forward. So there are some great organizations supporting women entrepreneurs, and I want to help make it easier for those organizations to have a bigger reach. And they are doing through Global Investor.
It's absolutely amazing, because it's not only like serving the entrepreneurs, but it's serving the whole community. And then,
yes,
for different cities, then you've now got effectively a roadmap on how to improve and where you want to improve. Okay, let's look at London, or let's look at Toronto, or let's look wherever. So it's really like just such a brilliant resource to have. Because I think that's one of the hardest things when people are setting up is just, where do you even start?
Where do you start? And that's exactly like, it was like, if I had a magic wand, what could help? So, and that's only 9 cities. So there's many more cities in the world we need to do. So we've done London, Paris, Sydney, Bangalore, Austin, and now Toronto that's going to come out very soon. We will be doing Berlin, Sao Paulo, and Tokyo. So if there are other people out there who want to support us to do this research on other cities, just reach out, because I think we need to do this. And each one is a love. It is a sweat, love, sweat, and tears goes in. I can tell you, the poor team who has to get it and make it look beautiful, they're like, give it to me. And I'm like, what happened? I want that. And it's like, I would go and polish it forever, but no, it needs to live and it can get better. And it's a snapshot of the city when I've done it. Of course, there will be new resources or some things that change, but it hasn't been done before and it's exciting. And that's what I like. I like to be an innovator.
So there'll be living resources.
Living resources. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I suppose kind of, we're talking there about like cities all around the world and everywhere has different needs. And I guess like, to me, without going into too deep into it, there's obviously an awful lot of change happening in the world. We've, an awful lot of change, particularly in the DEI space, which obviously we spoke about at the top around how women are, even though we're the majority, are still part of DEI. There's a huge amount of change and impact globally within that space. And then you've also got AI. And I think like both of those present opportunities. They also present threats. And I'd love to just kind of get your thoughts at a high level, just around kind of the impact of the changing DEI landscape and the opportunity, let's say, that AI presents.
Love it. Two really good themes. And thank you for bringing them up, Ciara, because they are central to this year that we're doing this in 2025 and for the future. So if you've been living under a bubble and you don't know, there are certain parts of the world where DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is at risk. So basically, certain governments are pulling back initiatives and, closing down government bodies and defunding any initiative or outlawing initiatives that were helping diverse people, whether they were, that's why it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. So gender, anybody working on gender and helping women in particular, and that's where I'm in, we're getting hurt. So what's happening is you are seeing there is a wave of corporates who did have diversity programs who have stopped them. There are then on the other side of that, Ciara, to your point of the opportunity, there are other corporates who are doubling down because it's part of their culture, their values, and they're like, no, they've already understood that investing in diverse people is what's going to bring more innovation to their company and more value creation and more competitive advantage. Why? Because our consumers, so the people that they serve, those corporates serve, those consumers are diverse and have diverse needs. And the people working for them are diverse. So if you go into a bank and you see someone who looks and sounds like you, you're going to feel more comfortable and feel more heard and seen, right? So we are unfortunately seeing both sides of the coin. Some things being shut down. Funds in one particular country, which I will name, which is the United States, and there are other countries where this happened, but specifically in the United States, where certain funds who were specifically funding Black women entrepreneurs they've had court cases against them and they're trying to shut them down and make it illegal because it's seen as like positive discrimination that you're investing only in Black women. But because they don't even get 0.5%, the need is so great that they need special allocation of resources. And I come back to the first point I made, Ciara and Ambre, which is this is not about saying we invest in women because they're women and they're better than men, or we want to take away from the men. It is about saying we want to increase equal access to opportunity. At the moment, people from diverse communities do not have equal access. So it's about leveling the playing field in order to unleash and unlock wealth creation. Because diverse founders, we see things differently. So we see different problems and we solve them differently. And the research shows that it's gender diverse teams in particular that create the most value. Whether having more gender diverse boards, executive committees, people working on it, all of the statistics, thank God, in the last 15 years, we actually have statistics. Before we didn't. And all the statistics prove that the bottom line gets improved, and then the planet gets improved. So when it comes to diversity, it's a challenging time, but on the other hand, I would also say, Ciara and Ambre, that it's a huge opportunity because the people who've been doing this and the grassroots, we're not going anywhere. This is not a nice to have, and we do it because we believe in it and because we care and we know the value it brings to the world. So I think we're going to see where in some places things are shutting down, in other places it'll be doubling down. And I think that's a good thing. So the companies and the government and the investors who get it in the long run are the ones who are going to have a better return and have better innovation, for sure. Let's come to AI, the other one, because I'm so glad you brought it up. AI is the biggest and most important change in the world since the 2008 when we had the smartphones that Steve Jobs produced, the iPhone and smartphones, and since 1999 when the internet was born. It was like, since those two huge cataclysmic positive changes, AI is even bigger and faster than those combined. So it is the thing that's going to change us forever. And it means that we're all going to be forced, and we are being forced, that it is forced to change and adapt, whether we like it or not. There's research showing that the children being born today are going to have on average 18 different jobs before they retire. And jobs, and that means different roles, not just in a company. 18. And I can tell you that also means, it's scary. It's like, whoa. It also means that most of those job descriptions haven't been made yet. Most of those careers haven't been made yet. And it also means that for sure, out of those 18 roles, you can guess at least 1 or 2 or 3 of them, they'll become entrepreneurs. So yes, AI is changing everything. It's going to take away the drudgery for some of the work, the tasks that humans are doing. It's going to speed up innovation, and it is speeding up innovation. It is also driving down costs. Now, and the bad side is people are losing their jobs for sure. So then it means that they need to reskill where possible. They need to skill up and change what they're doing. But it also means that we are going to have access to so much more knowledge and innovation. Like, I remember sitting in a conference, I would say it's probably about 15 years ago, at least 10, but it may be 15. I was at a global summit for women. I think it was in Berlin. And there was somebody from IBM Watson showing us 10, 15 years ago how their AI was already able to sift through thousands and thousands of screening of breast cancer, and was predicting at a much higher and better rate the probability of a woman from her mammograms of contracting and having breast cancer. It was much higher rate of accuracy than human doctors. That was 10, 15 years ago. I saw it. I was like jaw on the floor going, oh my God. And now it's happening. So AI is everywhere in all the apps we use. I was laughing. Last night I was watching something on Netflix, and I was talking, or I paused. I was talking to my mother on the phone, and suddenly my Apple HomePod said, yes, da-da-da. It starts talking to me. I'm like, oh my God, it's listening to my coffee. Yes, everything is listening to. It starts talking to me. I didn't ask you, Siri, stay in your box. AI is everywhere. It's going to be an incredible tool, I hope, for good, but evil too. Unfortunately, yes. So when it comes to the funding landscape, in 2024, AI got about 60 to 70% of all funding. So this is not going anywhere. So the trends in the funding landscape is where AI is not going anywhere. Most of the funding is going there. So if you do not build AI into what you're doing in some shape or form, you're going to be left behind. And I want to say that also from the government procurement perspective, because a lot of women don't think of, I could become a government contractor. Oh my God, they're the best form of contracts. Once you go through all the red tape and you're in for life. They're incredible, and that will attract the corporates. And, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, look at what happens at the UN, where the governments around the world and the G20 are coming to agreements and says, we're going to invest heavily in XYZ sectors. You got to look where the money is and follow it and trickle it down. And people don't think that big picture. They think the SDGs are a nice poster on the wall or a mug. But actually, those decisions are being made whether we like it or not. And it opened my eyes. I was at the UN last year, and for CSW, which is a big week on women's rights at the UN. And I remember going into a session with one of my colleagues, and we sat in and we were sitting in on a session. It was talking about geospace. It was talking about the satellites in space and AI and everything. And I was like, oh my God, these people are deciding everything for us in this room. And the majority of people in the world don't even know this room is happening. This conversation's happening and the budgets are being decided. So if you are a founder, listen carefully. Make sure that you build in AI as much as possible. Make sure that all of the people in your teams are using AI for part of their tasks, because it just means that then their brain power can be used for the more productive tasks instead of the menial tasks. And make sure you look at what the governments, where they're saying they're spending, and you target to become either a direct supplier in the supply chain of a government in your sector, or a supplier to a supplier. So becoming a tier 2 supplier. People don't even think of that strategy. And that's the buy from her piece. Like, get into the supply chain. And you don't even need funding from VC. You got the governments paying you, and those budgets are not going anywhere, except in your DEI, unfortunately. That's a different story.
And one of the things I hope is, as you said, AI can be a force for good, it can be a force for evil. And I think who's using it is really the driver for which it ends up being. But I suppose one of the hopes is kind of back to the point at the top, what makes a female business successful, it's different to what makes a male business successful. And, if we have, if we leverage when we're looking at where we're investing and who we're investing in, if we can leverage AI to kind of help with the decisions to sort of strip out some of the bias that exists, that is stopping, sort of women maybe getting the funding that they deserve, and the supports that they deserve, then, maybe that's another piece that, would be great to see.
It would, and we're not there yet, because the problem is the majority, there's only, I think, only 2%. I don't know if it's 2% of women in AI who are doing the coding. So the problem is that the people who are doing making the algorithms are still men with their male bias. So where we can have, there's a problem algorithm level, those people who are telling the computers what to look at and what to do with the data, and then the data set also. Because in the research and the data sets, there's not enough gender lens. So we don't have gender as a data point. I remember interviewing a gender specialist a few years, like probably about 10 years ago, it was the beginning of the company. And she said to me, Anne, it's only in the last 15 years that we actually have research that is being done based on sex disaggregated data. We didn't have it. So now we are collecting the data, and then we can make better decisions. So that's this power for bad. Unfortunately, Ciara, we need to have more women in AI. And I would say women, get into it also and use AI in what you're doing, because that's where the money is, and you will make more money and you'll have a bigger impact and solve more problems and touch more people through the power of AI. So if you want, because we women create businesses for different reasons, and we choose different segments and how to solve the problems differently, as I said. And if you're using AI, it'll bring down your costs. It will help you hire more people. It's all plus, not all, but a lot of benefits. But we still have somewhere to go.
A lot done, but an awful lot more to do.
Yes.
I could talk to you for hours more about this, and would love to. But I am very aware that we've probably
Run out of time.
run out of time.
Thank you so much, Anne, for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you so much, Olga and Ciara, for having me. As I said, I apologize, but don't apologize, because I'm very passionate. So I do tend to go on, but I hope that your listeners and viewers can come away from this conversation having more information and their eyes opened a bit more, eyes wide open to say, hey, I can actually change the world if I start to see the potential and start to buy and fund women entrepreneurs. I can have a difference. Never underestimate the difference that you can make. You can.
Thank you so much, Anne, for coming onto the podcast. It's been great having you. We will definitely link all the blueprints that you've talked about to this podcast so that our listeners can go and visit them online. Thank you to our listeners. If you've enjoyed the conversation today, please make sure to follow, like, and share. And we will see you next time.